everyone, so this is my review of Legion, Season 2, Episode 1, called Chapter 9. And essentially what this episode is about is that David picks up where he left off and has to sort of figure out all of what happened when he discovers that he's been missing for right around a year. And this was a really, really entertaining and fun episode that did do a really good job, in my opinion, of continuing on with the wackiness and weirdness and like confusion about everything, but then also still having like a lot of really great moments that keep you wanting to watch and figure out what's going on. And I did really like the sort of play on back and forth of what David thinks happens, and then also sort of getting these little details here and there about what actually happened while he was missing for the year, and him sort of realizing all of what actually went on, that he was actually missing for a year and not just a few hours. I really liked the whole style that they did with the Division 3 and like all the new characters and stuff that they introduced. But it did feel a little bit weird and different that they went from like this high security like facility with like all these weird and different guards and all this different stuff compared to what they were the last season, where they just seemed like almost like a secret service kind of group. It just felt like a bit of a drastic change, but still it was really fun to see sort of like the Division 3 facility and like how everything was run and how everything was done with like this sort of main guy in charge that you can't see his face. And then everything around Sid and David in this episode was interesting, with them sort of trying to pick up the pieces of the relationship from where they left off a year ago. And I really like the comparison that was made in there between David and Sid, where Sid sort of brought up how David has changed, and David sort of reminds her that technically he hasn't. Is still like the same person he was on the day he left, because to him it was only a few hours, but to her it's been a year, so technically she's been the one that has changed. And just seeing that sort of comparison there was interesting. And then also everything around them sort of figuring out how to go forward with the fact that they're both sort of not fully telling the truth to one another and stuff like that. So them sort of figuring out how to work with their relationship now was really interesting to see, and I'm very curious to see where all that's going to go forward once more and more secrets are sort of revealed between the two of them. And then everything with the Shadow King was interesting, with it sort of showing these little glimpses of what Oliver and Lenny are up to now, with it showing like a few scenes of what happened once they left Summerland, and a few scenes of them at like the club and like all these different areas, and sort of linking that back to this mysterious illness that's going on. It was also interesting to see how like the flow of all that worked. And I really like this scene with Plotimus, I believe is his name. I can't ever remember his name. Said when he went to the club to try and confront the Shadow King and bring him in, he also noticed that David was there, which was a fun sort of comparison back to when David's now trying to retrace what he remembers from the year he was missing. He also sort of makes those connections back to this one club. And that was fun to see how all that sort of fit together, and I'm very curious to see what actually happened once it is sort of brought up to Sid or to someone else about David saying like, yeah, I was actually there and I just don't realize it, or like what actually he's hiding there. And then I really, really loved the whole dream scene between David and like a future version of Sid, and like their whole conversation, just the style of how that was done with Sid not actually talking, was really, really well done and really interesting and entertaining in my mind to see David sort of working through what she's trying to tell him without her actually saying anything. And then just overall, this was a really, really, in my opinion, beautiful and well done first episode to introduce the season, and I'm so excited to see what they're going to do next. So yeah, that's my review of Legion, Season 2, Episode 1, called Chapter 9. So yeah, bye!